Yeah, we have a question from Jackie Rosen. How is the county thinking of long-term or 5-year or 10-year planning? And it doesn't seem that Ashland is looking past the supply here for 1 year. And she quotes, "We have enough, we have our own water." I suspect that's a Siobhan question. Any answer for her?
Yeah, I'll tackle that one. I know there's been a lot of talks, with the county commissioner in this Natural Resources Advisory Committee about looking at some long-term solutions. Kind of unfortunate because stuff starts getting more attention when we start getting into kind of a. So at the moment, there's some things that are getting getting looked at. Recently there was $5 million thrown towards some of the irrigation, at some of the piping, moving, for those kinds of things. So, at this moment, I'm not really aware of any specific plan or group that's looking at, few things, but kind of individually, there's a lot of folks talking about this, and I think.
Thanks, Siobhan. So I did want to remind people that this is being recorded. If you want to look at it again, you can later. And put your questions in the Q&A rather than the chat. It's easier for us to follow. We have a question from Sue Raleigh. Does the filtration system used by Medford include preventing cryptosporidium? I think that's probably a question for you, Cody.
Yeah, I believe it does, and I don't want to give a definitive answer just because that's not my forte. But if you contact Ben Clayman, he's our water quality director, he can give you a more definitive answer. But I want to say yes, I believe it does filter that out.
There's a question from Kathy Conway. What is going to happen to our water supply if snow water equivalent in snowpack drops 90% as projected by the end of the century? So that's an easy question, Siobhan. Oh, yeah. Any comments, you fellas?
It's just like, all we can really do is use what we have. And if we don't have that water and we don't have that snowpack, then we really just got to, make those hard decisions. Like, what's the most important and the most, beneficial use of the water that we have? And so, the one thing is that, as the snowpack decreases, our outside water use.
And I think on my end, it's just we're working towards these plans to help store water more long term, and in the conservation department specifically is working on different programs and different methods of outreach and things like that to promote water savings in general, just to prolong it.
Okay. Eric Dittmer, and I think everybody has heard of him, also asked in the chat, are there any efforts underway to add or update groundwater data?
Yeah, there is. During the previous legislative cycle, not this short one, but the one that ended last July, the Oregon Water Resource Department did receive some additional funding to, get more specialists, more groundwater hydrogeologists to, do different groundwater studies in different basins. Currently, the Rogue Basin isn't on the slate for a groundwater study because they're finishing up some other areas. But yeah, there are efforts taking place to update that groundwater.
Okay, thank you. From Della, are there any incentives besides lower water costs to get people to take out their lawns?
Yeah, so should have mentioned this before. Medford and Ashland have an intergovernmental agreement. When Julie Smitherman came back to Medford, we went into an intergovernmental agreement to help keep their conservation program running. So right now, Ashland does have a lawn replacement program, and Medford is beginning to follow suit, and we are in the process of creating our own lawn replacement program, and hopefully in the next year or so we can roll out the pilot program and see how well it does here in Medford. So to answer the question, yeah, there are incentives in that aspect. We haven't dug in the specifics. I think Ashland is $1.25 per square foot, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll follow closely to their program because it's very successful. So,
well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So people would call the Medford Water Commission for those questions about how far along you are.
Yeah. You definitely give me a call.
So we have a question. Is anything happening with the discussions of enclosing the open TID ditches to prevent evaporation of so much water?
Yeah, it's a slow process, and piping ditches is not cheap, and so it really just comes to a funding issue. And as they have funding and get different grants, they are working on piping different sections. Probably one of the most recent sections that's been piped with TID is the one near their diversion on Oak Street in Ashland. They recently piped that one a couple years ago. Another irrigation ditch that's been had a successful piping project done was the Roger Valley Irrigation District through their Hopkins Canal. They converted, I want to say, like 3.5 miles of their pipeline, of their irrigation ditch, from an open ditch to a pressurized pipeline, and converted many folks from a flood irrigation to a pressurized. So these talks are happening, and it's really a funding issue to try and raise those funds to pipe more and more ditches. As I mentioned before, the area was awarded $5 million for irrigation efficiencies for the irrigation districts, and my assumption is that a lot of that's going to be used to pipe different sections of.
Okay, so for Cody, the questioner says a Medford plan development, which was approved in the 90s, requires grass between the curb and the sidewalk. So can the city get involved in a solution to this issue of requiring grass in that piece of property between sidewalk and the street?
Right. So, one of the things that we focus heavily on is I'm a part of the land development committee that happens. Sorry about that. Let me turn that off real quick. I'm part of the land development committee. It happens every Wednesday, and one of my focus is looking at landscape plans for all new development, and so I try to push heavily on that. Reducing the amount of lawn to be installed and things like that. There are certain codes that there have to be followed, and one of the big things is that we need to work on is amending these codes to more of a conservative standpoint to reduce this. But in that code we do have things wording in there saying you can't stop someone from planting or taking out lawn for more drought tolerant plants and things like that, and being more conservative with their water. So there are ways around it, and we are working towards that as a group to amend those codes.
Okay. The question is, Ashland can use TAP, and I'm not sure what that stands for. I'm not in Ashland, to supplement Reeder Reservoir output as needed. How is Ashland charged for this TAP supplement, and can it be made more onerous during this extreme drought?
Cody,
you guys may not have the details on the Ashland system, but
yeah, I know. I'm learning. I'm the guru of Medford. Julie's the guru for Ashland, but I'm learning. So as I can recall, TID does supplement Reeder Reservoir, but there's no water in the reservoir. They're not, pumping or allowing that water to, be supplied. Then Ashland relies heavily on the TAP line, which is the Talent Ashland Phoenix line, and they have water rights to the Rogue River that we supply them, so we treat it and distribute it to them. So I think as we get further into the future and, the reservoirs continue to drop in percentage, Ashland's going to be more reliant on the tap line to supplement that, summer demand. Luckily, Reeder Reservoir, fills, and they have, and it's filling, which is a good thing. But like anyone and us, we rely on our Duff treatment plant in the summertime, and so does our partner cities.
Okay. So Katie Farrell has a question. Well, she's wants to let people know about a water summit being organized by Cultivate Oregon and Sustainable Rogue Valley. And she says September 22. I'm sure she must mean September of 2023, and then has a email which we can send out to members if they're interested in that summit. Thank you, Katie. And then from Scott, are there any plans to expand reservoir capacity? If it's needed, I guess.
Yeah, there's that conversation comes up all the time. However, so the real issue we're having right now is that we can't fill the current reservoirs we have. That conversation is taking place. It requires water rights to increase storage capacity. And right now it's really difficult to get a new water right, even if it's seeing an existing one, just because, we're seeing that there isn't water available, not even for new water rights, but even to satisfy the current ones we really have. And so as an agency, it seems kind of irresponsible to issue additional water rights to areas where we can't actually, satisfy the needs of the current one.
Yeah. So back to that question about the lawn replacement actions. They're asking, do the lawn replacements apply to those in the county as well as the cities of Ashland and Medford?
Yeah. So, unfortunately right now it's when we roll out a program like that, it'll be just for the customers in Medford, and also White City are part of our area. Ashland is, of course, just Ashland, but I think as time goes on and what the future holds, it's gonna, these conservation programs are gonna be more of a regional program where we, start to help those other partner cities. And so having this under intergovernmental agreement with Ashland right now, it's showing that we can support other partner cities. We just need more people to put in those different areas, or to help that and help these conservations grow bigger. So unfortunately, right now it's just Medford, or it will be just Medford, White City, because they're all in our system, and then Ashland has their lawn replacement.
Okay.
But as we further along, hopefully, Citrus Point, Eagle Point, all of our partner cities come along.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when the water master is resolving water rights issues, specifically for agriculture, is efficiency of use taken into consideration, or is there any proposal to do so?
Yeah. So the water code states that somebody who is using water use it for a beneficial use without waste. So anytime there's any waste issues being observed or identified, we definitely address those, and we have the tools to help highly encourage individuals to move towards a more conservative water use, so water is not wasted.
Okay. So about the issues with marijuana, the OWRD, is that Oregon Water Rights Division, has said it will not enforce the water law on the illegal cannabis grows. They consist of 80% of all cannabis grows in the Illinois Valley, 780 grows. How low would water levels have to get for the OWRD to stop water theft by illegal cannabis grows? Josephine County has a budget for that, and they have that coming up. They cannot, they're saying they cannot enforce water law on illegal cannabis grows. You want to wade into that case?
Yeah, I got that one. So the OWRD is the Oregon Water Resource Department. That's the agency that I work for. And so what I was kind of talking about a little bit in my presentation was, we're dealing with a lot more illegal use and water use complaints than we have ever in our entire history of our agency. And majority of those, that illegal use and those water use complaints are specifically cannabis related. So the Oregon Water Resource Department is addressing illegal water use for cannabis cultivators. In the emergency session in last December, my agency was awarded a quite substantial amount of funding to kind of up, revamp our enforcement section, as well as get some more boots on the ground so we can address these illegal water use issues. Currently for state employees in my district, which is District 13, there was myself, and we had one county assistant water master I take that back. There's myself, this one state water master, we had 2 county assistants, and 3 state assistants that were shared all over the Southwest region. Because of that new bill, we got 16 assistant water masters for the entire state. 6 of those assistant water masters are going to be down in the Southwest region, and 3 of those assistant water masters will primarily be working in Jackson County to address water use issues that are cannabis related. So the statements regarding that the Water Resource Department will not do anything regarding illegal cannabis has never been anything that we've ever said. We just have not have the resources nor the staff or the tools to do it appropriately. So we're hoping, I'm very optimistic that this new funding will be able to address many of those issues.
And I would just, tail onto that, and in the area of our bulk watering station, that's a big issue for us, and a lot of people see that as an issue, but I wanted to point out, only 1% of our total production is used at that bulk watering station. And I think Siobhan, did a really good job when he spoke at the Rogue River Keeper, for the Rogue River Keeper. And, he said, and I think you could elaborate on this, and where you said, a lot of these people who already have these water rights is a change in crop, and not so they went from, pears or, whatever to cannabis. And so they already had the water there. There's just a change in crop because of, the climate. So, but we do see those fill stations being used pretty frequently in the summertime. And I think there was a question in there of, if they heard that, agriculture is the majority of our water use, but, I would say it's only 1% of our total production that's being used at those stations.
Okay. We have a question about piping irrigation again. Is in some areas that's resulted in water wells going dry, and is that a concern here if they were to pipe the irrigation water. What entity would be looking closely at that?
Ooh, that's a great question. So the hope is that, you know, wells that are constructed properly, and one of the construction criteria in water wells is that the casing needs to go through encased into a confining area. And so what that confining area does is it kind of seals off any kind of surface water percolation, so it doesn't get into that groundwater that these water wells are being drilled into. And so in the majority of situations, wells are going to be constructed properly in case so that surface water isn't directly flowing right into that well. However, there are a lot of shallow wells that were constructed before construction standards were put in. And a lot of those folks, do have these shallow wells. And when I talk about a shallow well, it's within, 30 to 60. That's, for our area, that's a fairly shallow well. And they may not be constructed properly where they're not cased into that confining. But it's my understanding that when they are piping these ditches and stuff, there are some programs available to help address some of those shallow wells that may be in.
Yeah. Okay. So there is one question from the chat that's not on the Q&A. Is there any volunteer organizing effort like Firewise to engage neighborhood groups to encourage one another to be more water wise and educate people in our neighborhoods? Many are not informed in Ashland and elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
obviously you guys are doing your part.
Right. Well, and like I said, the League of Women Voters, you guys have your own subcommittee for, water conservation. And I think a lot more people are starting to gear towards these subcommittees within their within the community. And I was reading that, and that it's a great idea to have Home Depot do a presentation and give away some drought tolerant or drought resistant plants. And so I'm gonna put it on my list and see if there's any way we can do that and or get something going like that, because it's things like that that help the long-term plan of water conservation.
Okay. So Katie Farrell from the association that was going to be doing a summit, she reminds me that it is going to be this fall. It is going to be in September of 22. And she asks, is any of the $5 million that Ron Wyden has been talking about at town halls being made available to help agriculture to weather the drought and other factors driving out pear orchards and other food production? Maybe you don't know that far in the future,
I'm
but
not sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I hope
so. That's the end of the questions, Jim, and the Q&A.
Great, Kathleen. Thank you very much. So from the diversity of questions and also the number of participants, certainly this is a topic of high interest and will continue to be for the foreseeable future. I want to thank Cody and Siobhan for joining us and taking on this topic. Also Amanda from the League of Women Voters Oregon site for hosting. And there was a question or a statement, will this recording be available? And the answer to that is yes. And whether you're a League of Women Voters member or not, if you search for League of Women Voters Rogue Valley, sometime next week, we will have a link posted there if you would like to reference any of the material that Siobhan or Cody mentioned. We will get that posted for the wider audience. Thanks also to the attendees. We had a great turnout for this important topic. And I'll continue to do my little happy dance with every raindrop that continues to come down. So with that, we'll adjourn this meeting, and thanks to all.